Eric.
Hey,
Hey, Eric. Oh, there's somebody else.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Rich, this is Greg Wozniak. Was this meeting postponed till 7 o'clock?
I didn't hear that it was. I have 6:30 in my calendar.
Yeah, I thought I got some kind of it, and I wasn't sure if it was this meeting or some other Crafton meeting that got postponed till 7 o'clock, but I wasn't
It may have been.
I could not find a repeat of the meeting, so, of the
All right.
note. So,
Greg, I just looked up on the old Savvy Citizen. It still says 6:30. I want to check the website.
yeah, I don't know where that notice came from. I thought it was this meeting, but it could have been another one. I tried to go through Savvy Citizen and find out, because most of my stuff I look up on Savvy Citizen.
Yeah, I didn't see any postponements. Here comes somebody else. Lydia's on her way in. And there's Kirsten. Hey, Lydia.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Yes.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I don't have any sound.
And Greg, the the website says July 22nd is the next meeting. So I don't know where you got the notice from.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find it. I swear I thought some came up that said it was postponed till 7 o'clock.
Well, you know, the website says that meetings are held on the fourth Tuesday of each month at 7:15 p.m. So, you know.
I guess we gotta get that changed.
There was an update that went out that it was postponed. We didn't request that.
No, I
Greg
swear-
seems to recall getting a notice, right?
Yeah, I do, but I can't really say exactly where it came from or if it was actually this meeting. So it came up on my phone, I read it, and then it disappeared. So I'm trying to figure out where it came from, but
Well, we are here. We are starting at 6:30.
Okay.
We have asked that the website be updated before we need to do that again. All right, well, I'm just pulling up the minutes and then we'll get kicked off here. It looks like everyone has joined us.
Okay,
Got the agenda. I'll go ahead and share the screen with the agenda. Oh, seriously. Let's see if this works. I got a new computer today.
Yay.
Still
Yeah.
setting it up. And every time I try to do something new, I realize this also still has to be set up. But it doesn't want to let me share my screen.
of course.
Happy to share mine if you want.
Sure, you could. New computers are so wonderful, but they do take time to get everything transferred over.
So long. Wishing it was today.
Okay, well, we have everyone online, so should we go ahead and call to order?
Yes,
It is 6:33,
yeah, okay,
and we will do roll call. I'll start. Kirsten Compitello, I'm present.
Rich Kramer, I'm present.
Harry.
Eric Valsha.
Colton Chandler.
Okay, and then do we have any citizen comments? Greg, the floor is yours.
Oh, I'm just kind of listening in and just trying to get in with the flow of things. Well, Kirsten, you were on that the Parks and Recreation Planning Committee meeting. So I'm just trying to stay up to snuff on everything. So maybe I'll have something at the end, but nothing right now.
Okay. All right, well, we'll move on. The next thing on the agenda is the meeting format. We missed discussing this last month. Obviously, we decided to stay on Zoom for now, and that seemed to be the preference of everyone on the Planning Commission. I did check with Borough Manager, and it's acceptable for now that we continue on Zoom, but apparently the solicitor is recommending that we return to in-person as soon as we can. Council has already returned in person, and some of the other commissions have as well. So I'm not sure what specifically that means. The solicitor's comment was a bit vague. We should return as soon as we can. Leaves a lot of room for us to interpret what we're comfortable with, but there is clearly a preference that we return in person. So I wanted to make sure we didn't forget to discuss that today and see what the Planning Commission is comfortable with. And what parameters we might like to set for when we would, or if we would be open to returning to the council chambers. Myself personally, I prefer to stay virtual and use Zoom for another month or two at least until cases are a bit more under control. If it's still recommended that we wear masks indoors, I feel that, you know, if cases are still rising and it's still recommended that you wear masks indoors, I feel that we should be taking advantage of the digital options we have. But I'm pretty flexible, so I wanted to have a conversation with the Planning Commission, with all of you, to see what you're comfortable with.
I agree with you. I think, especially with wearing masks indoors, it's not that easy to have conversations and have it being kind of muffled. And this format does allow us to share content much more easily and have us all be able to see everything at once. I always found that the in-person meetings were a little difficult to actually review information because you had to have printouts of everything. Or everyone had to come prepared ahead of time.
Want me to go?
Eric, over to you.
I find it irresponsible to return in person. I really do. As a parent of a 10-year-old, there's nothing necessary about this meeting to happen in person. And I'm going to go on a record, make sure that the microphone is on, and my response to the solicitor and his strong suggestion to return to in person, explain it. Where's the benefit to the community of us being in person? Greg, thank you for coming, as you normally do, being the only attendee from the public on tonight's meeting.
Welcome.
So like I said, this is not an essential in-person meeting, and we're quite productive. We have not gotten a response to a nudge, a suggestion, and otherwise comment from council, who we serve at the pleasure of apparently, as a recommending body. So I don't know that we're a necessary necessity.
Rich or Colton, do you?
Right, I agree with that. I think we should stay until numbers, because like you said, until the numbers come down and steady out, and getting steady as low. I think we should continue on Zoom.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't, being that I'm in person for the council meetings, it's nice to have at least, another meeting that I don't have to sit in the office or the council chambers for. So it's fine with me staying on virtual as well.
So what I will do is tell borough manager that we intend to stay virtual for now. We will continue to use Zoom for the foreseeable future. We can revisit this if and when things change and we think it's time to revisit it. But I don't think we need to be quite month to month until things actually do change. So we'll just say that for now, we're staying virtual, and I'll update you all if there's any pushback from that. I don't think there will be. The borough manager so far told us that we could stay virtual. So I think unless we hear some more pressing reason from the solicitor why we can't or why something needs to change, we'll stick with our current setup for the time being. All right, well, we're all on board on that.
Right.
The next item on our agenda is the Parks Master Plan status update. This is not a planning commission initiative. This is something that is moving forward independently, that commission got going, or that council rather got going, and a consultant has been selected, and there was a kickoff meeting last week. But I think it's good for the planning commission to stay updated and aware. So we'll do these regular status updates. Both Eric and myself are on the steering committee as representatives of the planning commission. So that kickoff meeting occurred last week, Tuesday night, Tuesday the 17th. The consultant did about 2-hour meeting with the full steering committee, which was about 15 people. And I would say there's not a whole lot else to share just yet. She mostly asked us to list out the resources and assets we have in the parks, things that we like and want to build upon, and then list out things that we see as issues or areas for improvement. She also shared the overall project schedule. And there aren't any dates on that yet, but there are a couple of community events that will be scheduled in the upcoming 6 months. So we'll share more when we have dates on that. I'm sure council will share those dates as well, and we'll share them here at the planning commission meetings once those dates are set. We do have Greg as a citizen who's attending tonight, who's also on the steering committee. So Greg, if there's anything that you would like to share at this point, I'll let you unmute yourself.
Yeah, I attended the meeting, and am I still on? I seem like I clicked something here.
No, you're good.
Okay. So, because I lost you guys, but I'll figure that out. But anyway, yeah, I attended the meeting, and I felt that it was a good kickoff meeting, but I left with a lot of questions. So I think there'll be more to talk about at the next meeting. It's trying to just figure out what the structure of the entire committee was, as far as who's like who's the architect of the plan, who's the visionaries, who's the ones that have to see it through, whether it's going to work or not. I think all that will pan out. It seemed to be this meeting in the beginning was just pretty much get your feet wet and get some general ideas. So, but that's, I guess there'll be more at the next meeting. So
I will say it was, I think, a little unexpected for me that there was very little background or description of the project. There was not much framing for what their goals were or what their scope was, or, you know, so I think I would like to have more to share after kickoff meeting, but there was really not much provided by the consultant.
Oh.
yeah, I think she was just, I don't know. It seemed like she was just maybe trying to fill things out, and in my opinion, she should be the architect of this whole thing. The citizens should be the visionaries. Like we're in you know, is that when we feed our information to her and she gives her expertise back and we go back and forth with that. And then the engineering part of it, the engineer would be like, okay, you guys come up with this. This is how we can make it work, or this is why it won't work. So that's just my opinion on how those kind of things, my experience, I should say, on how those things run.
I think we'll know more as the process goes forward, and it's, as a parks master plan, it's unlikely to contain a lot of very specific information about, you know, detailed designs or engineering. It'll be more of an overall, you know, strategic guide to give the borough structure for what we're going to invest in next over the next 10 years. But again, there really wasn't much of that provided by the consultants. I think hopefully after the next meeting, we'll have a little bit more information to share. And then definitely some community events that will be planned in the next few months that the Planning Commission will want to promote.
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend in person. It's actually at the hospital, and the people who structured the meeting decided that they didn't feel a need to have a virtual component because it didn't fit. I expressed my discontent with their feedback on it, and I hope I didn't offend anybody, but I think in 2021 we should always have a virtual component regardless of whether we're in person or not. That should just be standard operating procedure. But I'm surprised to hear your feedback and saying, so was there a general consensus in the room of people understanding the direction of it, where she didn't have to convey the context or the goal of the park plan? Had everyone in the room read the park plan that's needing updated? Would be the only questions that I have.
That question wasn't asked. And I think we had a good conversation. It was a lot of, you know, people just sharing very, very broad, some specific and some very, very broad, but, you know, a wide variety of feedback about the ideas that we have for what we would like to see improved, what's great about our park system and what we'd like to see improved. And there were lots of, again, some very specific things that were listed, some very broad things, very high level things that were listed. And it's all, the point of the steering committee will be to give the consultant a little bit of structure and a little bit of local context as they start setting up for the bigger community events, where they'll continue asking these questions of the community at large. Ideally, that's what they said they'll do, and that's what I think we should expect. But as for, I think perhaps we could have had a more targeted conversation if there had been a little bit more overview from the consultant to give us some guidance as to what they expected to do and what was within their scope to do. But I don't know if it's not a major comment. We had a good discussion. It was a nice conversation from the people in the room, and it was a fairly large steering committee.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Kirsten.
I guess before we go on, are there any questions about the Parks Master Plan?
Did they say generally what the time frame was? Like, is it gonna take a year?
One sec.
Pizza's here.
Oh, I should have had this in front of me when we started the schedule. So the schedule they passed out is a 6-month schedule that ends in January of next year. They're anticipating 2 public events in late fall to early winter, October, November, December timeframe. They're expecting to have the study committee, the steering committee meetings once a month for the next 6 months. A public meeting in October, 2 public outreach events in, again, fall, somewhere in the October, November, December timeframe. They'll be conducting some key person interviews. They didn't discuss that at all at the kickoff, so I'm not sure if they've selected or what their criteria will be for that. But they will be conducting some key person interviews in the next 2 months, September and October. And they'll be conducting some focus groups in October. And I can upload this to our planning commission notes for reference so that we don't have to type it all out. But again, they did say that they would be having some other community events, but they didn't go into any other detail or description of what those would be or what their criteria would be for things like the interviews or the focus groups. Those weren't really discussed at the kickoff.
Cool. Thank you.
Again, they didn't discuss this a whole lot, but there is a piece of paper they handed out. So I'll put this in our planning commission folder, and it just lists the rest of their schedule. They're going to do background information, site inventory and analysis, activity and facility analysis. And then throughout that late fall period where they're doing their public events, they're also calling that the design consideration period, design process and recommendation period. And then the final product is due December to January. Which actually seems like a pretty quick process in my experience.
They had mentioned that they would give us kind of a packet 2 weeks ahead of time of some date. I'm not sure what that date was to review. And I agree with you, Kirsten. I believe that if you're going to do a 10 to 20 year plan, that 6 meetings is a little bit rough to do that in, especially if you're going to try to get public comment.
I was under the impression this was an update specifically of the current plan. This was not a full rewrite of a new plan.
Well, I mean, I think if you review the current plan and then you have enough comment that the changes could be, I mean, I don't know where to, I think that you have to take the citizens' comments into consideration.
Sure.
And if the citizen comments are heavy enough and there's enough comment to make that plan a much better plan, then I think it's worth it to listen to them and to make sure that they're heard and that there's a reason one way or the other for accepting, or I wouldn't say accepting, but for what would actually be in the final plan. The first plan, I read the first plan pretty thoroughly all the way through. And I think that it probably does need a fair amount of citizen input.
I
But
think that one
but I-
other thing,
I'm sorry, but I think they even said in the meeting that this schedule is kind of the first cut at it. And if it would have to go longer, it would go longer. That's what I got from what was being said. So,
I'm not sure what the reasoning for the 6 months was, if that was something that was set by council, was that in the initial RFP? It is being billed as an update to an existing plan, which is not uncommon. That many communities have plans and then they are updated periodically. But this parks plan was done about 10 years ago, close to it. So, it may be termed an update, but it is the right time for a fairly complete update.
right.
But anyways, we're also a small borough, so I'm not saying that 6 months is, I'm not saying there's any issue with it, but it is a fairly fast-paced process. So I think we'll want to make sure that the community is aware of it and that we talk about it at each of our meetings, and that we as a planning commission, and especially maybe at our next meeting when there's a little bit more information from the consultant to share, we can discuss some of our ideas together, because part of the reason why Eric and I were both included on the steering committee was to represent the ideas and input of the whole planning commission, and things that we have heard and discussed within our planning commission and throughout some of the previous workshops that we've had. We may have feedback that we'd like to share with them.
I agree. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So it was just the first meeting. First meetings, you almost have to take it for what they're worth.
Sure.
Things
Kick
get
off.
solid.
Yeah.
I'll bow out. I'll let you guys do your work.
All right, well, if we don't have any other questions or discussion on the Parks Master Plan, that's our update for what's happened on it so far. We can move on to a recap of our current initiatives. I kept a couple of small things on here, just so we remember to regularly update them. The community marketing and promotion that we discussed last month. Eric shared his idea for a simplified version of making that map of local businesses that can be easily updated and maintained without requiring ongoing planning commission participation in that. Something that the borough could more easily maintain moving forward. We are waiting on those documents though to do that. So that's still waiting for the redacted tax information so we can get the information about where our local businesses are. The working version of the Crafton Vision living document is still live and online. I haven't added anything to it. I wanted to open this up in case anyone else had anything they wanted to discuss adding.
Yeah.
And then the next thing was the Brick Streets resource and update. We have Greg on the phone with us. I know that Colton, you two had a conversation and talked about what Mount Lebanon is doing. And they actually have a historic preservation board that has been working on putting together a policy document regarding their brick streets and the maintenance and upkeep of their brick streets. So We don't have that policy yet, but they're working on it, and we can try to communicate with Mount Lebanon and get a hold of that or review it once they have something that's published. That sounds like a great resource to use for our own needs. I also have had a discussion with Ingram about their brick streets. Ingram has quite a lot of brick streets compared to Crafton. They have been investing in theirs to some degree. They have a fair amount of community support for their brick streets. And the major comment that they gave to me regarding the maintenance issues that they have with brick streets was not the materials cost at all, but the labor cost. So Ingram said that they recognize that their brick streets are cheaper in the long run for materials and performance. It's cheaper to have those brick streets. They last a very long time. They serve as traffic calming, they calm traffic down, and they require far less maintenance than asphalt does. But the biggest issue they've been finding is the labor to do the maintenance when it is needed. That was their comment about the maintenance issues and the cost issues that they've been coming up against with brick streets. They've been struggling to find qualified laborers that can do that job. I think that seems like a really great avenue for these municipalities that have brick streets and that don't have enough of them or enough staff to have a full-time staff member, a full-time employee who is skilled with brick streets to share the services of someone who does have that skill. But Colton, I know you've been looking into this as well. Do you have anything else you wanted to share?
Not in particular, you pretty much covered it, but I agree. I think, if Mount Lebanon's not that far, Ingram's obviously not that far. If it's something that we can all maybe pull together and see if there's some sort of a, team or person or whatever the case is that we may need to, be able to work on these streets. I mean, it's not, as you said, they don't require a lot of maintenance, and it's not necessarily something that needs done often. So I think, if other municipalities are interested in somehow going in on that, as far as finding the labor goes, I think that would be worth it. Even if it's, I don't know, consulting is probably not the right word for this type of work, but that kind of, the fact that we would all be able to, pull together and possibly have somebody or a team or whatever the case is do this. Because as you said, they don't require a lot of work, and even over many years, they don't require a ton over the years. So I agree. I think that's worth looking into. I mean, if it's going to be tough to find somebody at all, that could be a problem. But if finding somebody, if it's just a matter of finding somebody and pulling together, then that's definitely something that we can look into. And I think that sounds like Mount Lebanon has at least some sort of source of, somebody who can do this. So I think that they're definitely going to be a good resource for us.
Somebody's got to be maintaining their brick streets.
Agreed.
Got the funds for it and is finding somebody with the skill to do it. So
Crafton has used a really good contractor for it in the past. We have had good luck with that.
And I think the issue that we have right now, and that some other communities, including Ingram, have, is that there has been deferred maintenance on some of these areas for a long time. And so they're in need of much more maintenance than they would if they had been regularly cared for. Or it's just time for a really thorough update, a really thorough refresh. Some of these brick streets are about 100 years old. But if they're properly done, then they don't need that kind of maintenance every few years. They don't even need it every decade. They need it, every 50 to 100 years, depending on conditions. Well, I think some of these references, and even anecdotally, the experiences that Ingram has had, are things that that I might add to the Crafton Vision Living document, because that is something that the community can reference. The living document itself is an internal planning commission document, and we'll reissue an update of it periodically. We haven't put much in it recently, so I don't know if we're ready for an update, but when we do issue an updated PDF that's publicly available, having those references and that conversation with some, with some case studies to compare to for what other communities are doing with their brick streets, that will all be useful information for residents to be able to see too when they're looking into what are our options with our brick streets and why are we making some of the decisions we're making. Colton, this might be something that's in your hands to take to a council discussion to see if there's any interest in or ideas for how you could work with other communities. One possible avenue would be setting up something through the COG that does, that manages a shared set of skilled workers. Although I don't think that Mount Lebanon is in our COG.
That I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that. But no, I agree. I think that this is definitely, like you said, there has to be somebody out there that's doing this. So, I mean, there's, how many people, we have 6,000 people in Crafton alone, somebody who has to know somebody who can lay bricks. So, I know I understand it's going to be different from, building a street to building a house, but they're just, I find it hard to believe there's nobody out there. So
I gotta say it again. Crafton has a preferred contractor that does extraordinary work.
I'll have to see if I can figure out who that is, or if somebody knows.
Go back to my notes, and I spent a lot of time with Rob before he was gone on this. We put into the budget buying a truck, getting an extra guy for the road department to fix brick potholes so that we can take care of the streets that we have. And then over time, you look at any street, 2 or 3 or 5 egregious potholes a year, those streets are going to last a long, long time. But their costs were, forgive me not having the right number, it was real money. It was $50,000 for every X number of feet, right? So it's a lot of money, sure. But you can see, and there's places around town I can point to you where they did that work. And that was 15 years ago. And it's in rock solid shape where they did whole stretches of work. And the whole point of the brick patrol was to do the little pieces, the potholes where it's not worth investing in having the whole street done, because it's just an egregious section of, a tank trap that has fallen in over the years or what have you. That's all there. That's all being done. It's all sitting there. Just got to say yes to it. But there were certain people on council who voted for it, put it into the budget, and then Rob decided not to do it. What are you going to do when people don't follow through? Well, they're not here anymore.
Well, and I look at, like you said, Eric, there's certain streets, like I look at Bar, for instance. I went up Bar heading, I guess, towards the city. It would be from, I think it's Sterrett Street. I can't remember the exact, but coming up from Crafton. And, if you make a left and head towards the city on Bar, there's a particular section that I wasn't paying enough attention to how deep this actually was in the bricks, where they had paved it, but it absolutely needs redone. It is a ditch, and I scraped the crap out of the bottom of my car going over it. And that's, my car is not that low to the ground, but low enough that that's something that I feel like, okay, well, it wasn't that big of a, an area. I feel like that's something, like you said, that's not worth fixing the whole street, but definitely needs redone it with brick and not pavement. It's literally just a circle in the ground that's pavement right in the middle of the street. So I agree.
As an additional data point to that, They did go so far as to put, rubber did hit the road on it. They did a section. Unfortunately, it was 2 weeks before the lockdown and COVID hit and everything ceased, and they've been playing catch up ever since. So I don't think that this is completely off. Don't write off the public works, because it was something that they did start. They did a section. They did a full section of 25 feet. They did it in 2 days with the current road department, public works staff. They did a fine job on it. Like I said, unfortunately, the paver and the materials and everything sat there for most of 2020 before they could get enough crew just to come by and collect the rest of it. So they never finished the 70-foot, 60-foot stretch that they planned on doing. So everything is there. The know-how's there. That everything, it's all there. But as far as outsourcing giant sections of whole road, there is a preferred contractor of the borough that we've had terrific success with. I just can't think of the name, and I don't want to be so insensitive to say it's an Italian name, but you get it. It's somebody that has done tremendous work. People in the road department are going to know who it is if you simply ask.
I haven't heard of anyone's, asking us or proposing lately removing any brick streets. I think Crafton has kept a lot of those, and this is all a great conversation to have, to kind of think in advance, but we're being proactive here, which is a good place to be.
Yeah.
In setting up the reasoning and the resources and the knowledge to support the ability to maintain and preserve our brick streets, if and when there is one that needs a major repair. So is this maybe something where we want to put together, we gather up these resources and then submit it to council as a planning commission, package and recommendation that they consider these in any future project involving brick streets?
And can we pause on that question and hear what Fred has to say?
I didn't catch that, Lydia.
Oh, I was just saying that, can we pause on that answering the question until we hear what Greg has to say? He's had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Greg, you shifted on my screen. I didn't notice.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I've been a little bit involved in the Mount Lebanon meetings and things like that. They are working on a policy that's going to be going through their council coming up, I think, in the next meeting. And so I'm kind of a conduit to them. I know Oakmont's been doing wonderful work on brick streets. Ingram's done some great work on Schley. I know that I think the only reason I want to fast track something like this is because of the stormwater projects that are ripping up the streets and not putting brick back. Starrett for one, a good hunk of bar from Starrett on up the hill, that dip that Colton had fallen into, that's going to be probably, as far as I know, that's probably be paved from there down. Starrett's going to go from brick to asphalt. So it's a shame, because when you come through Poplar Street, there's a big sign, "Welcome to Crafton," and one of the characteristics right now is a brick street, and that's going to be asphalt according to the plan of the wastewater, of the stormwater management system that's being put in. So I know Mount Lebanon will be, as far as I know, talking with them that they'll be willing to share their policy at this point. Not at this point. I think it may be after it gets approved by their council, but also they mentioned that there is a difficulty in getting craftspeople to lay brick streets. But that doesn't mean that we cannot do a non-regrettable process. So if Starrett Street is being ripped up right now, and we need to at least put the sub base down that can handle a brick street and potentially asphalt over it and maybe mill it later on and put the brick back on. However, I just think we should do non-regrettable construction, that we don't lock ourselves into the asphalt streets. With that said, I haven't done any studies on how that's done. I know that CMU has done a study for Mount Lebanon. That's how I got introduced to that, because I know some people at CMU and had this conversation with them, and they talked about Mount Lebanon. So anyway, I think there's more to be talked about on this. So I would keep it on the Planning Commission's agenda going forward, because I think there'll be more information to put something together.
I think once Mount Lebanon has a policy, if we can look at that, that would be a great time for us to then think about whether we would like to propose our own policy. In terms of any sooner steps for the Crafton Boulevard project, Planning Commission did assemble our thoughts on that about a year and a half ago. And we did recommend that the brick streets be kept if possible. And their current thought is not to take that recommendation. I'm not sure whether that's still something that can be changed or not, but we can discuss whether we'd like to ask that be looked at again, and ask if that can be, if it's possible to still consider that. I'm not sure. I know we've had that discussion and we made that recommendation, and the project has since moved forward in the way that it has gone.
Yeah, Colton, you have any knowledge of that?
Okay, so you said a year and a half ago it was proposed to council, Kirsten?
Keeping the brick streets, if possible, was one of the recommendations that we shared with them.
Or we're talking about strictly, at least right now in this conversation, we're talking strictly about the Crafton Boulevard sewer separation project.
Right.
Outside of,
just to clarify, we obviously didn't do any costing or engineering studies from the Planning Commission. So we didn't issue any kind of very strict recommendation. We simply recommended that they try to keep the brick if possible.
We reiterate the vision document that we published last July as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been two, at least, to council in two different manners.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can't say for sure. I mean, I agree. I think that the brick street should be saved. I know it's not necessarily a cheap option. I think that going forward, we need to definitely at least, figure out what Mount Lebanon has, or what they have, trying to propose. And I think that's what we need, is to go in with as much information as we can. I think that's going to be our best bet as far as, how to try and at least going forward, if not, like Mr. Wozniak said, trying to backtrack on at least Starrett or anything like that. But, as Kirsten and I have talked about, I'm definitely a big proponent in saving the brick streets, as many of them as we can. So I think that, not necessarily saving money isn't always the best thing to do if it's not what the community wants as a whole. So, I think, but it sounds like it's going to be difficult possibly finding somebody that is going to be able to do this. But I think that we need to go to council with as much information as we possibly can. I don't know how far along Mount Lebanon is with their possibility of this policy being proposed to council, but like I said, I think we just need to go in with as much information as we possibly can.
So how about, here's a suggestion we can discuss. How about I take this conversation that we've had and the couple of resources that we've gathered and send this as an informational recap to council with the request that they review it and get back to planning commission about whether it's possible to continue considering how we can preserve the brick streets in the Crafton Boulevard project. I don't know if we can make, I don't know if there is still the possibility to do that, but we can certainly ask, and we can ask in conjunction with also giving them this information and asking them to please look at that and consider that information before they respond.
It's great.
Okay, wonderful.
They can then let us know if it is possible, if it's not possible, if it's potentially possible with certain conditions, and then we can think about those and decide what we think is, whether there's a recommendation that we can make about that particular project.
Great.
And then again, once Mount Lebanon does their policy, if we can get a hold of that and look at it, we can think about whether we to propose our own. I think that would be a great next step. And Greg, you have your hand up again?
I didn't know I had it up. I didn't mean to have it up. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I didn't mean to have it up. I guess I'm cool.
All right, so I'll follow up on that. We'll get information about where that project is at, and we'll see if we can push it further. But if not, I mean, we'll see if we can get that more solidly into our vision document and think about our policy of our own in the future. Are we ready for the next item on our agenda?
Can I just ask you a quick question about this, just because I haven't been on that side of Crafton since I've been back from vacation. Have they gotten up to Sterrett Street yet with this project?
Yeah, they're on Sterrett right now.
Okay, they are on Sterrett. Okay, I was just curious. I haven't been over there since they started on Crafton Boulevard, just because it's been quite difficult to try and go around that. So I've tried to avoid it as much as possible lately, but that's okay. So they are on Sterrett. That's good to know.
Well, actually, one other thing I will add before we go on to the next topic is that, and we don't need to talk about this today, but if we move forward and if we do think about some kind of policy, we'll need to also consider ADA accessibility. Our public works has been very busy this year. They've been doing a lot of walkability, sidewalk and crosswalk and intersection improvements. Been doing a lot of really good work. But one of the complications of brick streets is that they are not accessible for wheelchairs and those with limited mobility. And so we may, if we want to continue investing in keeping brick streets, which I'm all for, we may need to also think about a policy for dealing with ADA accessible crosswalks at those streets.
Mhm.
Because we don't want to, continue investing in 100 years of infrastructure that will not serve a full community.
I agree, and I think that's something I was thinking about that too, because I know they have been doing that pretty much since before we moved here. They've been working on a lot of these corners. But I think that at least what I've seen in the past where of places that have brick streets, like in Southside and different things like that, just because I'm down there, they have a lot of, they'll have maybe the section where the sidewalk, not the sidewalk, but where the ADA accessible path goes through that's crossing the street that's just concrete or asphalt, or they do the intersection and asphalt or whatever the case is. But I agree. I think that's something that we need to look into, but I think that's also a relatively simple fix, is just to, add some concrete in there just where the path would be of travel for ADA accessibility.
some places do a really nice job with stamped concrete. It can still look like brick, but that's a piece that will, especially if we do a policy or if we make recommendations that brick streets be maintained and built back, we'll need to think about making sure that the crosswalks are made accessible. All right, well, the next item on our agenda here was requested. We were asked to put this on our agenda, and it's a parking discussion.
Kirsten, before you head to the parking issue,
Sure.
just to stay on the marketing topic, I just threw in based off of the bad data, no offense, but what was collected by hand. If you want to click that, you can see what it could look like. Just that way, if we do get data, just click on it and it'll open it. There you go.
Can you guys see this?
This took 8 minutes. So you can click on any business there. And it'll be organized by business type if we had good, clean data. But there you go.
So would we be able to we'd be able to group them or color code them? Type?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just, take a guess at something that's an actual business, but for whatever reason, I don't know how they got in there, but yeah. But it's obviously redundant to what's
There you
already.
go.
What's that? It's obviously redundant to what's already in Google, but at least it gives you an idea of what it could look like.
It'd be nice to be able to sort between businesses that have physical walk-in locations and businesses that are,
Yep.
Like people's home business, but they don't offer a service that you can go to. They just have it registered there.
That's just layers. Yep. Just need good data.
So just, this is from the original list, right, that we had already had in there.
Yeah, this is what you guys labored through.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not intelligible the way it is, but I figured, well, at least you guys can get an idea of a sense of what it can look like and how easy it is. You know what I mean? And yes, you could go crazy and put this in GIS and do better layering and filtering than Google offers, but this is just a Google map that you upload into and takes literally a couple of minutes of your time. And then whatever you put on the left hand, whatever you put into the data is what shows on the left hand side. So if you have a website, it'd be the website. If you have a phone number, it'd be the phone number. If you want to sort the layers by physical location or by pizza shops or restaurants or whatever it is. Yep. That's how it works.
Well,
Okay. Sorry. Before you left it, I figured you could at least take a look at it.
Yeah, nice.
It's easy. It's a lot easier than trying to do something elaborate. At least this is a proof of concept. If people like it, then we can, ask for resources and put some time into it, invest into it. But this is a start. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. We'll try to get better data and make a nicer updated version. I'll follow up with Doug on that and see where we're at. So parking discussion. Colton, I'm going to let you handle this one. You've gotten a request that we discuss this. So just to frame it a little bit to get started, I did check with Doug with the borough manager on what we might feasibly be able to do in terms of parking. We are going to need to keep in mind that there are guidelines about where you can indicate parking, where you cannot indicate parking, what distances need to be separated, how far away parking needs to be from curbs, et cetera. But probably one of the biggest issues that we'll get into if we start, thinking about what kinds of changes might be made on a spot basis, because this question came up because one resident was asking about their street, is that if anything we do on one street, we may have to do on other streets. So the borough will need to make sure that they're not overdoing something or overcommitting to something that they can't.
Kirsten, can I get you to clarify that? If we had zoning, and I don't know, this is just me being a dumbass, but help me understand the whole zoning thing. If we created in the zoning, for example, I think of an area before Colton starts, I think of an area that I'm on frequently that is Hawthorne Avenue. It's about as wide as a matchbook and people fly up and down that road. Kirsten, you might know a thing or two about that street.
Yeah,
It seems to me like that could be designated like as a right of way kind of a passage street. And so it could be treated differently with marked parking and, speed humps and, whatever it is, where you wouldn't have to apply it to all of the streets in the borough. Is that part of what zoning does?
no,
Okay.
not really. It can do some of that, but zoning tends to focus more on what you can do on a private lot.
Okay.
The streets are public property.
But so the council could codify streets that are then right of ways or something, special designations to receive different treatment that would be not the same as other streets. Is that true?
That is true, but with some complications. Yes, there are standards to follow, and if they do any kind of special treatment, they do open themselves up to other streets, residents of other streets wanting the same treatment. And then, there could be legal issues if the borough is maintaining different streets differently. That's all very high level. As we get into talking about parking, and I want to let Colton bring up the request that he got. We can talk more specifically, but we need to, keep in mind that at a high level, there are certain things that the borough will not be able to do or will have concerns about doing. So, we just need to, we'll need to talk through what we're actually recommending.
Mhm.
That's just, I don't want to throw us off. I did run that by Doug, and that was kind of his feedback also. So we want us to keep that in mind before we get started. But Colton, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Yeah, no, that's definitely good information to have. I'm glad that you had that discussion. But my question was more or less just pretty much how it's laid out. Is it to prevent or help to prevent certain people from being greedy with parking, as opposed to being considerate to their neighbors. And this is a little bit more politely than the request was brought to me, but to prevent people from being greedy with the parking and being in one space instead of multiple spaces. Is it possible to do something to try and help that not be an issue? I don't know, off the top of my head, I was just looking at different areas of Crafton that have, and there's not a ton of them, but different areas of Crafton that have either the lines or different things to help guide people to know where to park. And that was just more or less the question was, is that something that the borough can look into, whether it's through the engineer or public works or whoever's able to do that, just in certain areas that are more densely populated than others. For instance, like the upper half of Woodlawn, this would be pointless to do on there because nobody really parks in the street there. Or I guess maybe the middle section of Woodlawn is an example that I think of that wouldn't necessarily benefit from this, as opposed to, even my street being one that would, I think, benefit from, some sort of guidelines or something that would help people, park better. So, and, while keeping in mind, of course, that like my street, for instance, we all have driveways. I don't think there's a single house on my street that doesn't have a driveway. And for whatever reason, people choose not to use them. which, is neither here nor there to me. I use my driveway and I use my garage, so it doesn't matter. But, there's definitely an issue whenever there's, for instance, like my neighbors who have a driveway that who no longer live here anymore, who had a driveway that can take one car, and they had two vehicles, and they were doctors and in and out. And I felt bad, because I always definitely made sure I parked in the driveway, just because I felt bad when they'd come home at 2 o'clock in the morning from a shift or whatever, and they weren't able to park on the street at all. Or they would get dropped off just because it was easier to not have to, worry about walking so far to their house in the middle of the night. So, it's just, that was, my street came to mind. My street wasn't the one that was originally pitched to me. But I thought about it as, maybe is this something that we can do or recommend we look into in a couple different streets or something along those natures, just to do a test run to see if this is something that would work, or if there's even any options available for this type of thing.
I know the idea that you initially shared, Colton, was of painting set parking spaces. And my concern with that is that when you paint delineated parking spaces, you have to leave space for an average or over average vehicle and for vehicles to maneuver. So they end up being larger than many people need. So generally, when you delineate those spaces, I think we might actually lose parking spaces. And I see this on my own street. For example, there are several people who are contractors and who have large trucks. And sometimes there are 5 cars parked outside between the driveways, and other times there are 4, because sometimes there are large trucks that are taking up those spaces. And if we were to delineate spaces, we would probably only delineate 4 spaces. But when the trucks aren't there, you can park 5 cars. And so we would be losing a space. And that's just math. But that being said, there are areas where you have certain amount of space between driveways, and you can only park a certain number of cars anyways. And one of those areas, if there are areas where parking is an issue, maybe that's something that the borough would be willing to try. Parking, delineating specific parking spaces. This just gets into the issue that all streets are public property. And so if the borough does it in one place, they may be asked to do it elsewhere. Delineating parking spaces on a public street is not going to, and should not be, reserving parking for a specific person.
I have a question. Is the issue coming from residents, or are there people that aren't residents taking up parking spaces and residents aren't able to use the parking spaces on their own streets?
Sorry, were you good?
Do we-
It was originally brought to me residents. I've heard it now a couple times, and I've heard it in the past, even long before I was on council. But it was just a question that was brought to me as something able to be done. And then I started to think about my street and how we could definitely benefit from that, or something more helpful over here. But I don't see, at least from what I can tell on my street personally, that it's mostly residents. But as far as I can't say for sure, I would say, from what I understand, it would be a resident question as opposed to it's not necessarily people from outside parking here. Because I know that, just discussing it with somebody else, before I even brought it to Kirsten, it was, somebody said something about, well, some places do permit parking or something like that. I don't think that would benefit here. Mainly because, and anywhere in Crafton really for that matter, just because, well, okay, so that designates, how does that work for people that do have driveways? Are you designated 1 space? Are you designated 0 spaces on the street? That's something that I feel like something like that would open up so many issues that, that's, And then what do you do with people who have visitors? What if I have 10 people coming to my house, obviously post-COVID issue, but like, what if I have 10 different people coming to my house with 10 different cars, what are we supposed to do if there's no parking on the street? So I think something like that is definitely not an option anywhere in Crafton. But yeah, the question was mainly just from a resident, and I have heard it in the past from other residents as well. And this was mainly just to have a discussion to see if there's something that we can do to, even not necessarily get into anything right now, but even just have somebody look into, is there any options available to make this a little bit better, on some people. I myself don't have an issue, but, is there anybody else that may benefit from this? And then like Kirsten said, is it something along the lines of where, like on Hawthorne Avenue where they can't, where they can typically fit 5 cars in one space, depending on the size, or one section, depending on the size of the vehicles. And, would it be more of a hindrance to them as opposed to a beneficial thing to do something along those lines? So, that's why I had just brought this to see if, anybody else had heard anything, or if, there was something that we could potentially recommend to council to even look into it is all.
Yeah, and I think this can be an open discussion because I personally haven't heard that issue except for one. I've heard it in one particular place, and because it's only one particular place, I think there are some things that the council could do, but not really anything it's not something that requires a borough-wide solution. Because
Permits and all that stuff are very expensive. It's a full-time person basically to administrate all that stuff too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I definitely want to make it very clear that I don't think that something like permit parking would be beneficial in Crafton. That's definitely not something that I think would be a good idea, personally. But, again, this is coming from somebody who doesn't typically park on the street, but I don't think that permit parking or anything like that anything along those lines particularly would benefit in Crafton at all.
I think we could suggest that the borough look into testing the paint option in specific pinch points if they come up, but we would have to have those points identified.
Well, and that's, so my thought process actually behind that was, so my street is going to end up getting paved in the next probably year, give or take, just because it's been needing done for a long time, and they're supposed to be, the gas company's supposed to be coming down and doing a line, so they're going to end up paying for half of it. But anyway, that's going to be getting done in the next year or so. So, maybe my street could be a test dummy street for this, because what's the worst case is if it doesn't work and everybody hates it, it's something that's going to end up being, they're going to end up repaving the street in a year anyway. So, it's something that if it doesn't work, we could just go back to, having it as it was, if it ends up being a big issue or all the neighbors hate it or whatever the case is. But, I think that my street, that given the fact that everybody does have driveways that are usable, that, my street in particular, that's why I brought it up, was that it might be a good test dummy for this particular, whatever might be best, whether it's, I know Kirsten, you had said there was a couple other potential options, other than, my thought was just my initial thought just automatically went to lines, just because that's, that, I don't know, that's what I was thinking was a good solution. But, that's, I think that my street would be a good test dummy for this, just because it's going to be repaved again next year anyway. So,
in general, it's more common to see painted delineated parking spaces in commercial or mixed use or downtown areas, not so common on a residential street because it tends not to be needed. But with that in mind, one of the areas that I thought about before that would benefit from better parking management, personally, I'd love to see meters and paint, but that would go hand in hand with a substantial economic revitalization program and funding source. The area that makes most sense to me would be right around the busway, because it is an area that sees a lot of traffic. that is not solely residential, but has space. People do park there. And sometimes people don't necessarily park in all of the spaces they can park in because they don't know that they can park there. So that might be an area where better delineating available parking where it exists will prompt people to use that parking. And this is anecdotal, but I tend to see over by the busway, people are parked up Emily, up the hill, rather than back along Emily on the flatter portion. They tend to park there last, even though that's where you're less in the neighborhood. That's where they would ideally park first, rather than encroaching up the hill into the neighborhood. That's just an anecdotal observation, but that seems to be what I see happening. So that might be an area that would be worth trying something out.
I agree. And I think, I think that there, and I think on the other portion, originally when you had said the busway, I don't know why my mind automatically went to the bottom of Hawthorne and Woodlawn, but because I totally forgot about North Emily, and that's the one I used to always take. But anyway.
Park there too, but that's never backed up.
Yeah, and I mean, but even there, so I've parked down there before, and it's never been an issue per se, but it's, that's something that could potentially, the lower half of Woodlawn from, I believe, what is it, Marion? I think it's Marion and Woodlawn right at the bottom of Hawthorne, but up a little bit on the other side, maybe on that side of the road where people park. It's, that's something that could potentially be tested out there as well, because I know that's typically a populated area for the busway once that parking lot at the bottom fills up. But I agree. I think from coming from somebody who used to park on North Emily and take the bus, I agree. I think that would be a good place to test it out as well.
Do we have thoughts from the rest of the planning commission? Would we like to make, to recommend that council or recommend that the borough manager look into the feasibility of this, or would we like to each take another month to do some research about it and then think about what our recommendation will be at our next meeting?
So just to
strong feelings.
clarify, if we're gonna ask, I'm all for asking the borough manager to do this. My question would be, well, I'm all for asking council to ask the borough manager to do this, I guess is the way it would work. What specifically would we have them look into? The feasibility of putting paint on the street? I mean, can you look into parking in these areas? I just worry about, being absolutely clear about it.
That's kind of the question I'm asking. Are we comfortable saying, we've been talking about painting lines on specific streets?
Yep.
Are we comfortable with selecting an area and saying that, honestly, because of the feasibility issue here, I don't think we would make a recommendation to council first. I think we would simply ask the borough manager whether this is something that can be done.
Sounds good to me. I think
Before it goes to council, if it even needs to go to council. Paint does not cost much, but
Right.
there may be reasons why they can't do this in the first place, and Public Works would know.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I just want to make sure. So I want to write the question, right? So can we look into the feasibility of known congested areas of painting parking spaces on the street, right? Because what I don't want to do is make someone think, oh, well, no, we can't put in parking meters, so that's it. End of the question. You know what I mean? We're not asking about parking meters. So I want to make sure that we're defining the world for what it is, which is paint on the street.
I think we're also.
Go ahead, Lydia.
I think we're also limiting it to areas adjacent to the busway stops at this point.
Congested areas such as around the busway parking. Is that a fair statement?
The two stations.
That, and I think, I would definitely love to throw my street in as a test, mainly because if it doesn't work, we can just go back to what it's gonna, what it originally was. Because we don't have, our street's usually pretty full, at least down or on the upper half of my street, not so much down at my end, but just because it's gonna be ripped up next year either way, I think it would be a good street to test it on, to see if it would be beneficial to the neighbors. Because I know my other neighbor's not the only one that's talked about it. So, but I agree. I think definitely the busway areas mainly for sure, and maybe leave it at that.
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little confused about the idea of paint on the residential streets. Unless there's areas where people are not using usable parking spaces. Like if it's just confusing and they don't actually know they can park there, lines make sense. But if people are just bad at parallel parking and taking up 2 spots worth, I don't see how paint really, it delineates spots, but it just seems like you'd have to paint every street in Crafton if you go that route. And I'm not sure that really solves that much if the root of the issue is just too many cars.
Right. It's Promenade, right, Colton?
The busway?
Your street.
No,
No,
my street's Union. I live on Union.
sorry, I knew that.
So what would that be? North Emily, Union?
No, so I'm saying, so look what I put in here, right? Outside of my inability to apparently type tonight. So what is the feasibility? So 2 questions, right? What is the feasibility of painting parking spots around the busway areas of congestion? Right? What is the feasibility of painting parking lot spots on that should be non-mixed use, right? So around mixed use areas such as the busway areas of congestion, right? So now we're asking 2 questions. One is that, the crazy busway syndrome that we all have seen. The other is, I would say Union's a perfect example. I go back to Hawthorne because it's just like it's only 2 feet wide and people, drag race down that street. But use Union is fine as you said, test case, right? So you have one that is clearly mixed, use commercial, the other is absolutely a residential street, right? Union, I don't think anybody could argue is anything like a busway congestion, right? It's simply good citizenry and some reminders via paint about how to park and be a neighbor. But
Well, Union's I live on, at least my half, but I live on the paved side of Union going towards Ingram, as opposed to the brick side. It's, we get a lot of traffic on my street. It's constantly, because it's a cut through to get to Ingram because everything else going the other way is almost a one way or it doesn't go down to Ingram. And that's the only way to get there except for going up into the city and back down, the other way. So my street's very busy. And it's, I originally pitched when we were talking about having this done, I originally said there has to be something that we can do. I would love it if my street was brick because that would slow people down, which is definitely a big complaint of mine living on this street that I didn't know moving in here that it was as busy as it is. But that's a totally different subject. I love the idea of speed bumps, but that's not an option. So
I would like bike lanes. I'm gonna put that on the record.
yeah, anything. Oh my God, I said anything that we can do, even put up one of those little signs. You can put it right in my front yard that shows you how fast you're going because I know people are going faster than 25 on my street. So but anyway, sorry, that's a totally separate subject.
I don't want to just put a pin in that because I'm still confused that if Gateway were retained to throw some cables on the ground and prove that these streets have more than, 92 cars per day and therefore are subject to a different kind of treatment. And we'll paint all of those streets with 92 cars a day with parking and with speed bumps. And they will all be treated the same, but as only those streets that have, say, more than 9, because it just seems to me like there's a number like your street and Hawthorne and, the net realized average of Ewing because of CIT. Like there's a couple of streets in Crafton that get, if you take a monthly or weekly or whatever quarterly average, however they lay those cables down and people drive over them, I'm sure they're gonna have much exponentially higher counts than a street like, I live on Belvedere, it's a dead end. There's like 9 people that drive down the street a day, I mean, it's not the same at all. So
So-
you treat those differently.
I want to pivot us for just a minute because we're getting into some bigger topics here as well. And I want to just put out there that council has said that they're interested in, this doesn't mean it'll happen, but there's been interest in pursuing a grant next year for a multimodal plan, a multimodal grant that would, be funding to do multimodal planning. And that would include looking at things like improving walkability, bike lanes, but also traffic calming, potentially road narrowing. So some of the things that we're talking about, and parking is also a traffic calming tool. Different ways of delineating and laying out parking and organizing parking is a traffic calming tool as well. So some of these we may be able to address in a more comprehensive manner if the borough does go after the multimodal grant next year that they intended to go after this year and then delayed because we talked about this some months ago, but I believe the reason was that they had heard that there was a backlog and didn't expect that our chances would be good this year. So they decided to table it until next year.
Fascinating. All right. So then we're good with the questions that we have.
So are we good with these questions? I'm hearing that we still have a lot of uncertainty over it and that it might be worth, I can still ask the borough manager about whether this is feasible, because that's not really a recommendation yet. We're asking for more input about whether there are, legal issues or cost issues that would keep this from happening. Beyond that, though, are we all on board that we think this is a good idea, or do we want to think about it further to decide what criteria we think would make it a good idea?
I'll just say, this is basically covering what I was looking for out of it, is just to at least look into, is there potentially any options of what can be done in this area? And, I'm sure I'm not the only one that has been asked this question before, and though we may not have heard of it before, I know it's been asked before. So, and I agree, though, it's depending on how it turns out, it could potentially open up, okay, well, my street could use this too. Why don't we get this done on my street? And, that's where I think that, like, say the engineers or somebody would need to get involved and say, because I don't know, does the borough road crew, do they know it? Do they know the laws? I don't know what a standard parking space is. I don't know any of that information. I don't know if they do either. So I don't know if it's as simple as just painting lines on the street, because, you look into, like, for instance, my street, there's driveways, North Emily, there's driveways and things of that nature. I don't know how far you have to be from a driveway, depending on the parking spaces size as well. So, but nonetheless, this is covering at least, what the question that I had and the question that I was asked, these questions and then some are covering that. So, people constantly complain about the parking near the busway. So that's definitely, and mainly the people that live on the street are not thrilled with the fact that people park up the street. So, I think that North Emily would definitely be a perfect, at least the lower half of it would be a perfect example of, testing this out. So this covers what I was looking for, in other words.
I'm comfortable with this being our next step. Reaching out to the borough manager to better understand, to share that we have this idea in these places and better understand the feasibility of it before we make a recommendation. I'm also comfortable saying that we would like to make a motion to encourage council to pursue that multimodal grant next year. They've said that they're interested, but we can make a motion to put that formally on the record. We recommend it.
Can I make it? Oh, Rich, you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Can I make a motion that we encourage council to pursue the multimodal grant as soon as possible?
Second.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Hey, are you okay with the context I put into C.I? Just to make it clear. I just know sometimes when you send a question along, it's interpretation to the reader. You know what I mean? I like to fully contextualize and, waste people's time a little bit if I'm being overly redundant, but be absolutely certain that we made our point. We're not making a recommendation to council. We're just trying to explore feasibility to inform ourselves prior to recommending anything to the council. Recommending, good word. Recommending anything to the council.
That's where I'm at. Are we all on board with that? Are we all okay with that as a step?
Exploratory.
Works for me.
All right.
Yeah, it works for me. That's good.
No, really a bit confused about how lines improve a street when the root of the issue is too many cars, but
Shame.
I'm fine with proceeding this way.
It's Lydia, it's just shame. For shame. You look at somebody get out of a car, it's double straddle on a line, and you look at them, and you know what? They're not going to do it. They really got to be quite a creature to do it again. That's all it is.
And that's why I think this is feasibility of parking spots, painting parking spots. I mean, I think that would open up the question of, there's other options. Is there another option that's not necessarily lines? It's something.
Feasibility.
Right. Whatever the case is, that's why before it goes to council, if there's, if anybody has any ideas, that's why I think, engineers would have to get involved, just because they may have a better idea, of something that can help with this. And, I think that's mainly what my question was. Is there any options?
So maybe we can reword number 2. Instead of specifically saying painting parking spots, maybe it's explore ways to improve
Parking?
parking along the street or whatever it is. Seems like the painting spots make sense when people don't know where to park. That tells you where to park. Painting spots doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me if the issue is just too many cars. One family has 4 cars that they're not using their driveway, they're just parking in front of the house. Well, yeah, that doesn't leave that much space for the other 2 neighbors.
I mean, I think, so like on my street, for instance, everybody, at least as far as I know, and this is just general thought, I don't really know for sure, but I believe that, most driveways in Crafton weren't really designed for many cars. I mean, it's just, that's the way Crafton was designed. There wasn't really an option back then when they were building these houses. So, I think that my street in particular, though, is newer. And I think that there's, most of us at least have enough parking for all of our vehicles off the street. Hell, some people even have, garages and everything. I have a garage, but not many do. But, I think that it's just, if my thought process behind the lines were, well, okay, so that's dedicating at least parking spaces as opposed to somebody coming in and just parking in 2 spaces in front of their house because they don't want anybody else parking in front of their house. I could care less if somebody parks in front of my house because I park in the driveway anyway. But that was my thought process behind the lines, is that will at least designate areas so that at least that many people have a place to park. And maybe that would encourage people to use their driveways more. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't, maybe it would just make it a total dumpster fire and everybody's on the street and nobody has a place to park. I don't know. That's why I pitched my street as an option to test it out and see how people reacted to that. Because, we are going to have it paved. And I mean, lines can be removed anyway, but I figured my street is an example of just to test it because it's, it's not necessarily an issue, but it could definitely use some improvement. But just because it's getting paved again next year at some point, I believe anyway that, it's just something that would be easy to test on because as you said, paint's cheap and, it's a cheap test, I think.
I'm willing to look into this and get more information about the feasibility and the cost and any potential other ideas or restrictions that we need to be careful of. But I will just say I don't believe that delineating parking spaces will result in there being more parking spaces. I believe it will result in there being fewer parking spaces. And there are studies and math to back that up. I think that it will be helpful potentially in places where people aren't utilizing all the space that is available. But also the public streets are public streets, and they're everyone's right to park there. And people with driveways pay the same road taxes. I don't believe that anybody has more right to park on the street than anybody else.
What if we request that a savvy citizen reminder and a reminder in the newsletter get sent out to be considerate with parking on your street and only take up the amount of space your car needs?
That's not a bad idea either. I don't know how much it'll help, but it's definitely worth a shot.
So you're that just to be that guy. So you're, oh jeez, sorry. So you're suggesting that we ask to send out a message to people to be kind?
Yeah.
Love it. Love
I gotta say though, I don't think it can't hurt. It could, I mean, what's the worst
I
case?
think I just got something in my unicorn trap. That's awesome.
I gotta say, I think it can't hurt. I think that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know, I don't know if everybody's thrilled with that idea. I think it's a good idea. I think it's at least worth a shot.
It is, there's a bigger flavor to that too, right? Savvy Citizens is an underutilized tool, and having, positive responses every once in a while saying, hey, remember, have you checked on your neighbor? Remember, were you kind in how you parked this week? Something like that is I think a wonderful and non-used aspect of something like a savvy citizen communication tool. But that's just me. Yes.
I remind people every day to lock our cars, so this isn't lock your car and park considerately.
Yep.
I agree. That's good.
Agreed.
Cool. Lydia, do you like what I added? Was that Lydia or here's, I don't know. To number 1?
That's good.
Yeah, I think that's
I don't
accurate.
know who suggested it, but Lydia, can I just pause for a second? I know it's really late, but Lydia, can you turn down, you got a hot mic. Can you turn down your mic just like one rung?
Lydia's muted.
I'll try to just talk not as loudly. You guys were it seemed like you were having a lot of trouble hearing me, so I started kind of.
No, it's just that weird microphone thing. It happened before. It comes across, at least for me, it comes across, you're the only one that comes across as like a hot,
Extra loud.
overinflated mic. So if you turn it down like 2 notches, you should be perfect. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, do you want to add the request to savvy citizen on there?
That's up to you guys.
I think it's a good idea. It can't hurt.
I
What can they
think
say
so.
is, what can they say is no, I think I say yes.
Go ahead and add
Say
it.
yes.
That just goes to Chris.
I got reprimanded for saying when the water went out that, since, 400, 500 families don't know what the hell's going on with the water, maybe you put it in Savvy Citizen. They told me, well, the water company didn't tell them. I said, well, did you call? Did you pick up the god darn phone and call and ask? Did you think? No. Sorry. Savvy Citizen. They're not going to do anything. It's not my job. I think it's a lovely idea, though. Wonderful sentiment.
Right, well, we're getting kind of late here. So we'll see how much we want to cover tonight. The upcoming workshops, we talked about having another info session on eco districts in September and one on zoning in October. I have not done anything to prepare yet for more content for the September one, but I did verify that the pool is not having any events and the other committees are not having events. So we don't have something to align with. But we had tentatively said that we could do this September 15th. And if we want to go forward with that, then I'll reach out to entities like the library. The rec committee might join us, even though they don't have something planned yet. They might be willing to add something alongside our event. If we want to go forward with September 15th. Alternately, we can push that back. Again, I have not had the time to prepare any new content for that. So what we currently have is the same informational content that we had last time. And we could simply present that again at like an in-person in the park event, or we could table it. The other new information regarding eco districts is that I did reach out to Carnegie. We talked about this last month, that Carnegie was interested in this as well. And they got back to me to set up a time to talk, which we'll probably do next week. So I'll get in touch with them. We'll have more of a discussion next week to see what that might mean. But that we've got a new player interested in the eco districts and no information yet from them further. So are we comfortable going ahead with some kind of info session in September, or given that that's coming up quickly and we're still not willing to go back to meeting in person with Planning Commission, do we want to hold on an in-person event?
I'll do whatever you guys want. I don't really hold up.
I'm gonna really wait to hear what you guys think on this. I'm on the fence. I would like to keep momentum going, but I'm kind of burnt out right now and need a week or two to recover.
Yeah, I'll just say, so I accepted a position for another job today that I'm going to be starting right around that time frame. That's probably going to be tough to, transition between two jobs at that point. That's just me personally, but I think my last day is actually the 17th with my current job, so that's going to be a tough week. And the week after, I'm sure won't be any better starting a new job. So that's just my personal take, is that would be a very tough time frame for me, no matter what the case is, whether it's in person or virtual.
I'm fine with postponing it.
I would like to have another meeting with Connect, which we've been talking about having, to get some information about what sort of resources or support we might be able to get to help make this happen, besides just being led by us as volunteers. And then I'd also like to talk with Carnegie and get some better, have more information from them and have that discussion that we can build upon before we do an event that where hopefully we actually have more to share with the community. Whether that happens a few weeks later and we do it in October, or whether we shift it until after that, because we also want to do something for zoning. I don't have any particular preference, but shall we maybe delay the eco district and try to pick a date to follow?
Yeah, it sounds to me like that's where everybody's will is, but nobody wants to really say it because it lets go of some momentum. So I'll just go ahead and say let's delay it. Anyone disagree with what I just said?
No, I think
So-
you're right. So we can gather more information, let's wait.
I would like to for us to take a little incremental thing or two to each do. I reached out about this eco district to the Chartiers Nature Conservancy. Apparently the AOL address that I was able to find on whoever this person was, I put her into the doc last night. I got nothing. But what I did hear after the big fish kill, I guess there was a lot of contention around the golf course that spilled the beans on that, killed all the fish in Chartiers Creek. You guys hear about all that stuff?
Yes.
Everyone heard about this? It's awful.
Mhm.
Absolutely freaking awful. I don't know. And they'll get away with it. They'll get away with it because I don't know. I don't know. Is there anything we can do? To say they suck? I don't know. Maybe put that in our notes.
The-
Huh?
And there will be more coming on this, but at the kickoff meeting for the Parks Master Plan, the creek was discussed, and that is part of our open space network. And that's something that we can push on getting that plan to connect with them as well, and also thinking about what kinds of trail improvements can be made through that process.
Yeah, as a council member on this call, Colton, I hope you don't let that die. Because that golf course, I mean, you know, our solicitor isn't going to volunteer to do more than our solicitor does. But I really think that our solicitor should kind of put this on his back a little bit, earn his mark a little bit more than he does, and actually really stick it to them to make sure that whoever natural resources, whoever does their job, to A, make sure that doesn't happen again, and B, make sure that the reconstruction and the restoration is not at the backs of, oh, we'll wait and see if the fish come back. Anyway, the Chartiers Nature Conservancy has taken a position on that on Facebook. I'm not a Facebook user. If you look at my profile, I think there might be one picture in the past 10 years. So I'm a little hesitant to reach out to somebody and be like, hi, I'm not a foreign national stalker. Are any of you guys comfortable as Facebook users to reach out to the Chartiers Nature Conservancy and request a meeting? I'll take the meeting. I'll do the call. If you want to intro me, I don't really care. I just felt weird about my Facebook account is pretty light on the content. So they look at it and they say, who the hell is this, right? Can anyone reach out to the Facebook Chartiers Nature Conservancy and see if they want to talk?
I'll reach out to them.
Great. I'd love to be in. I just felt weird. You know what I mean? And I'm not one to hesitate about reaching out to anybody for anything, but that just seemed a little weird.
I have to step away for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Kirsten, can you loop me in if you hear back?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll make first contact with them and then try to get an email or phone number we can use going forward.
If you guys have not walked the Chartiers Nature Conservancy path, I did happen to take one of your council members up on it, and that council member had no idea that such a place existed. So the shelter still stands, and it's ready to fall over any minute, but it's still up there. Anyway, it's a cool place, and we should be promoting it because it gives us almost 8 miles of active trail. Just in one fell swoop. If you ever go to Scott Township, they've got 8 miles, but it's the same trail on the same half of a mountain that goes back and forth and up and down 30 times. It's beautiful, but it's like 4 acres and we have 1,000. It's crazy. Anyway, yeah, if you could, I think that part of the eco district thing, if we're going to have an in-person event, I'd like for us all to really, you know, kind of be into it, you know. And have some ideas and get people there and do that sort of thing.
I do agree. Yeah, I'm not opposed to having something smaller, but I would like to put more into this before we really, you know, try to make it a good event. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is try to have a couple of those follow-up calls and then start proposing a potential date for a workshop before our next, not for it to happen before our next meeting, but hopefully be in contact with all of you by email with some possible dates so that we can potentially, you know, get something decided on before our next meeting.
That's great.
So that we have
That's great.
it. But moving on to the zoning, do we want to also pick a date for that, or do we?
Is Connect going to come to our next meeting? Is that what you're trying to do?
I certainly could. They probably would if we want them to.
Right?
We could invite them and they would probably attend. Mm-hmm. I was just going to have a conversation about who we can talk to and what sources we can try to pursue to get some funding or other support to help us get started with this, because they've been involved in the eco districts that have already been implemented. They were heavily involved. And it's a big lift for us to do as volunteers on this commission. It's a lot of effort to really get people engaged and get partners and champions on board, which is a required first step to get an eco district going. So I think it would be really helpful to just get some support from external sources lined up, whether that's actual funds or whether it's, recommendations for funds that we can pursue or partners that will help us.
Or saying, you're probably going to think this is a good idea. This is a terrible idea, and here's why. That's the kind of thing that good advice is made from.
And so far, Connect has told me this is a great idea, and we have a bunch of resources we'd like to share with you.
Let's use it.
Let's schedule a time after August, because the executive director was out of state for a while. So now she's back, and now I want to get that on the calendar.
Here's what I'll say to you. I'm happy to help. It seems like of the number of action items that are on this list, many are on your back. If it's easier to ask Connect to come to the next meeting and we all take some ownership of some takeaway activities coming out of that, that might make the level of effort and the burnout factor on your back be a little bit less, right? So it's up to you. If you want to talk to them directly, if you want to bring them to the meeting, I don't know anybody, or you can give me a number. I'll try and call somebody, but whatever.
I have that relationship. So the things on my agenda for this are mostly just emails. This is not what has me burnt out. I've just had a really busy few weeks here.
Understood.
But I would like to reach out and follow up on the phone calls that I've already made. But I think adding an invite to them to attend our next meeting is also a great idea, especially since I'm pretty sure that is our joint meeting with Ingram. I think that's a great time for them to participate.
And I'd love to make some assignments for them too.
Yeah, so I will definitely do that. I think that's a great idea.
So you were talking about the zoning and potentially October. So if we're not going to meet again until September 26, 27, whatever it is, I don't know that we can pull off zoning in October. If we want to go and we upset the order of operations, we could do that too. We could do zoning in October. We can plan that now. And then come the end of September when we meet, we can plan on when we do the eco district workshop. Just flip the order. What do you think?
Lydia, you were working on some ideas for that zoning session, and it was still on the fence whether it was going to be a workshop or a series of informational flyers that could be posted. Do you want to make a decision on that? Do you want to set a date, or do you want to come back to that next month too and keep working on it?
Yeah, I thought we had decided the flyers.
I didn't catch that.
I thought we had decided to do flyers. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, your sound's not great, but so we can just work on those flyers. And do we want to talk about those more today, or do we want to talk about those next month and try to get them out in October? You already had this document that you're sharing. You had a series of concepts to put on each of the flyers.
Right, so
These are the 7 that you shared last month, right?
yeah, except I put this on the Ingram Drive,
Okay.
and I don't think anybody else added to it, but I did try to beef up the explanation so that it was a little bit clearer. I'm fine with going over them today, or if You want me to just proceed with trying to put some flyers together and somebody else can jazz up the graphics? I can do that too.
What are we gonna do with them?
We're gonna disseminate them to get some buy-in from both communities, Crafton and Ingram, ahead of the grant award, the hopeful grant award.
So we were going to put them on social media and, ask the borough to put them on the website, send them out through Savvy Citizen. We can, if we prepared them, we missed the August edition of the newsletter, but they can, if they're already prepared, they can go out in the next newsletter, which at this rate, the zoning wouldn't actually start until after the holidays, probably January. So that gives us a number of months to start circulating this informational, some general awareness and information about what zoning is and what the intent is and what this process can offer, so that people are aware of it and a little bit more informed about it once the project actually starts.
So I should just proceed with what we have.
I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the distribution model look like? Is this like a postcard infographic for each of these? Like, I mean, what you have is, I understand you beefed up modernized old code. Where does that, let's just do it. How does Brad Kraus access this flyer? How would he find out about it? Right? We all know Brad. He's my favorite guy. How would someone see this? How would they stumble across this? Like,
I'm Savvy Citizen on Facebook or through a newsletter.
does Savvy Citizen do like attachments? I'm just trying to, what does it look like? Is it like a 5x7 index card that's what do you think? Like, I'm just brainstorming. I'm trying to figure out what can we do? Do we make a Google Doc and have 7 slides in it, and we can chunk off each slide as a infographic and release each infographic on all of the networks as best we can? Is it just a message that goes out, on Savvy Citizen, hey, coming soon, modernizing old code is important to Crafton, learn more, blah blah blah. Like how do you envision people finding out number 1 or number 3 or number 7 or 2 or 5 or 4? What does it look like? I think the content's great. I'm just trying to figure out, how do we distribute?
We talked about if each of these are they could go onto one flyer altogether that's posted on the borough website. But they could also be split out. I mean, these could both be done. They could each be, individual little boxes that can all be assembled on one flyer or saved out as a series of small JPEGs that are shared on social media and rolled out, one a week to kind of start generating awareness and keep that momentum going with, a new piece of information, a new update and reminder from the Planning Commission about something that's happening soon in the community. We have 7 items here that could be 7 separate posts, each one pointing people back to the Planning Commission website again, and maybe with a little note on the bottom that says Crafton is pursuing, a process. How we word that might depend on whether we release these before or after we get the grant, but something that indicates Crafton is looking to update their zoning. Stay tuned in 2022 for more, to see this process along.
How are we going to get there? What do we need to do?
For next month, by having this done. At least the the ideas behind it, somebody else can jazz up, make it a little bit more user friendly, but I'll use the tools I have.
Are you good with the content that's there so far?
That's the real. That's why I put it on the shared drive, and we were kind of.
I can't find it.
Yeah, I looked through it. I think it's good. I didn't add in or change anything.
If you go in the Ingram shared drive, the Crafton Ingram shared,
Oh, I don't know where that is.
go back to drive and go to shared with me.
Crafton Ingram Planning Commission meeting materials.
Yeah. And then the zoning update folder. I also sent an email on August 4th with the link directly.
Now you're talking. Let me find that.
I just tagged you in it, Eric, so you might get a notice. That'll take you right to it.
A minute. Cool.
Lydia, I'm happy to work with you to make them look more graphic. I don't know if I'll get that done before the next meeting because we've got a number of other things that we've talked through. But if we, at our September meeting, if we have confirmed all of the text by then and then can do the graphic, the flyer creation after that, I have the ability to do that.
Okay. So let me see where I get with it.
Are we fine with that timeline that we'll, we weren't going to be releasing these until October anyways, right? So we have our September meeting to confirm the content.
I'm fine with that. Maybe we'll have an idea if we've won the grant by then.
It would be nice to add some images, but some of these might be hard to add images to. So maybe this can just be a group task for all of us in the next month to look at these again. And then, you know, see if we do have anything to add or edit and drop in some photos if we think of anything that would be a good fit. Some of these might honestly just be, it might just be nice to have a photo of Crafton. But some of these we might be able to find some good example photos for. So if all of us take a little bit of time over the next month to look at this again and see if we think of any images that would be useful to convey these, then next month we'll have hopefully a couple of images to pull from as well, and that'll help us put together the graphic versions.
Great. Any idea where to look to educate yourself on the benefits of modernizing old code? Is there like michaelbakerwebsite.com or something like that?
I can send some around. I mean, I would have to do a Google search, but there are plenty. So I'm happy to send a few.
You want to tag anything in the doc or, you know, whatever, just, I don't know, just because I'm blind. I mean, I get what you guys talk about, but I don't have any expertise in this domain. So anything that you think, hey, if somebody wants to skim through this and maybe pick off something that we can use. So don't make that as additional work though, please. If it's like a simple thing, great. If not, I'll Google away. I'm a good Googler.
There is a, I'm blanking on the specific name. It's a particular writer who has done some really fantastic work on this stuff. Smart Growth. There's a website, it's a company that has a website, and the person who founded it and started as an author, has written several books, has an active Twitter account. So there's lots and lots of publishings from Smart Growth that have that are available out there. And I'll do a little search and see if I come across a really good particular article. I'll share it.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry to derail that. It's helpful though. smartgrowthamerica.org. Does that sound right?
Yes, I'm trying to remember the guy's name because he's got his own. I don't think this is similar. This is good too. This is not the one I was thinking of. I'll think of it and I'll send it. I'll think of it.
Cool. All right. Sorry to derail. That was super helpful though.
Strong Towns. There we go. Strong Towns. That's the one. Smart Growth is also good, but Smart Towns is the one I was thinking of.
All right.
Okay, well, we've had a massive long meeting tonight, but also this is the first meeting we've all been at in a long time. It's been a busy summer and we've always been at least one person down. So it's nice to see everyone. We have the review of our June and July minutes. I took the notes that Lydia had assembled from both of these. Rich was out. And Lydia had started notes and I cleaned them up. So I have no comments on either of them because I put them together. So if you guys want to take a quick look through these and see if anything needs to be adjusted. I took the format that we've been using with our agendas, but then just shifted it, modified it slightly so it's easier for someone who finds this on our website to be able to follow. Put things out, removed the numbers and the bullets and put things out in more of a narrative form.
The only thing I'll say is I don't believe I was at the June meeting. I could be wrong about that. It might have been the May one that I missed, but I don't recall the meeting ending at 7:45, so I don't believe I was at this meeting. I could be wrong about that though.
Looks like you're not on the roll call, Colton.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was looking at Crafton. Sorry. Yeah, never mind.
I mean, I wasn't there, so I'm fine with it, but how do we vote on it with 3? You guys can vote on it, right? That's considered a quorum out of 7 or 5? 7?
I motion to approve it.
Rich, you gonna second that?
I'll second that.
There you go. Hooray.
Sorry about that. I was reading.
I agree.
All right, so we're
Okay.
good.
I agree.
July?
So
I agree.
minutes are approved.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so June minutes are approved.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the July minutes.
I motion to approve whenever someone's ready to second.
One note I will make, there were a few things that we had included in the notes that were hyperlinks to things. I did remove the hyperlinks that were linking into our own Google Drive. Because for the purposes of minutes, anyone who clicks on that who doesn't have access to planning commission files, the hyperlink wouldn't work. So I reworded a few things, but only kept the links that are publicly available.
Cool.
Okay, there's the others.
I just made a little typo correction.
Anyone ready to second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of approving the July minutes?
Aye.
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 4 ayes and a muted Colton. So we're good?
Okay, we have no more citizens on the line. So no citizen comments. I think we are ready to adjourn.
Hey, I just threw that down there. I'll yell at somebody again, but I mean, if you guys want to look, the Crafton Borough Planning Zoning website, the last time there was a minutes that was posted on there was like April. The meeting start time, 7:15. So, you know, old
Well,
habits.
I'll ask for that to be changed too, especially since we have a couple of minutes now to send off to be posted. I'll put a couple things in that email about updating everything.
Cool beans.
Sounds good.
Doesn't seem like anybody's come looking for them either, but you know, it's still nice to do our part.
Have them out there.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, 8:40. Should we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Again. Have a great evening, everybody.
Good night.
Right.